Picture your typical fantasy RPG. You slay the dragon, loot the treasure, gain XP. But have you ever stopped to wonder what the party eats between those epic battles? Dungeon Meshi, or Delicious Dungeon, throws that convenient oversight right out the window and asks a brilliant fundamental question. What if your adventures had to survive by eating? Well, the dungeon itself. It's a premise that's both hilarious and surprisingly profound. We follow Laios and his party deep in a dungeon, not just to rescue his sister Fauna from the belly of a red dragon, but to do so on a shoestring budget. Their solution is forage, hunt, and cook the very monsters and plants they encounter. This isn't just about survival, it's understanding the dungeon as a living, breathing, and most importantly, edible ecosystem. Today we're going to sharpen our knives a bit in our minds also and dissect the incredibly detailed and thoughtfully designed ecosystem of Dungeon Meshi. We're going to explore the unique flora, fauna, and not just the obstacles or quest objectives, but we're going to look at it as integral parts of a complex food web. And more importantly, we're going to examine how the series masterfully connects these fantastical ingredients to real-world culinary logic, making the bizarre surprisingly believable. Just so you know, there's going to be spoilers. With that said, let's dive in and grab your apron into the world of Dungeon Meshi. One of the first things that sets Dungeon Meshi apart is its rejection of the random encounter table approach to monster placement. Creatures in this dungeon aren't just waiting in rooms to be slain. They have habitats, observable behaviors, distinct roles and patterns within their environment. Because it actually makes sense. You ever do any National Geographic or any type of Netflix documentary about the world, you'll see videos of predators hunting prey, scavengers cleaning up, and even decomposers. But in the case of this anime, slimes breaking down organic matter. Think about it. The party observes how giant scorpions might ambush smaller creatures, or how different types of slime thrive in specific conditions. There's a clear sense of interconnectedness. You see? We see hints of food chains. What eats what avoids what. Like for instance, the presence of certain fungi might indicate a damp area, which in turn attracts specific insects, which then draw in larger insectivores. It's a subtle thing, but if you notice it, it's a constant form of environmental storytelling. Now, a huge part of how we learn this comes through the eyes of Laios. His almost academic and, well, let's be honest, sometimes deeply unsettling enthusiasm for monster biology is the primary window into this world. He's not just thinking how to kill a monster, he's pondering its anatomy, its life cycle, its place in the grand scheme of things, and of course, how it might taste. This deep-rooted curiosity, shared and refined by the culinary expertise of Senshi, transforms monster encounters from mere combat into field research. This dedication to ecological detail makes the dungeon feel less like a game level and more like a genuine wilderness. It establishes a foundation of fantasy realism that's really important for the culinary aspect here, because if the monsters are just arbitrary collections of stats, attacks, eating them feels like a gimmick. But if they're presented as plausible organisms within a functioning ecosystem, then the idea of them as a food source becomes far more engaging and, dare I say, logical. Now, when we think dungeon, plants might not be necessarily the first thing that comes to mind. We imagine stone corridors, traps, monsters, but Dungeon Meshi gives its subterranean flora a surprising amount of attention, treating it not just as window dressing, but as an active part of the ecosystem with its own unique properties and, naturally, culinary potential. Like take the iconic walking mushrooms, for instance. The series doesn't just present them as mobile fungi, we learn about their life cycle, their movement patterns, how they react to stimuli, and more importantly for Laios and Senshi, their different edible parts and how their taste can vary. And then you got the screaming mandrakes, classic fantasy trope, yes, but here their dangerous shriek is a specific defense mechanism, and the roots, once properly and carefully harvested, becomes a viable food source. We see glowing mosses that provide faint illumination, strange fruits that might be sweet or dangerously acidic, and even parasitic plants that interact with the dungeon's fauna. It's fascinating. Each of these plants has an implied ecological niche. Some are clearly primary producers forming the base of localized food chains. Others might be decomposers like certain molds or fungi, and some like the aforementioned mandrake have a clear defense mechanism. This level of detail, even for plants, reinforces the idea of the dungeon as a self-contained, functioning, living, breathing environment. They're not just random pickups, they're organisms adapted to survive in this bizarre and often light-deprived conditions. This approach contributes significantly to the fantasy realism of Dungeon Meshi. Even the plant life follows a certain internal logic. And of course, this ties directly into the culinary theme. While monsters are the star ingredients, plants are the essential side dishes, seasonings, or even main components of a meal. Senshi's knowledge isn't limited to monster butchery. He understands which roots are starchy, which leaves are bitter but nutritious, and which fungi can add depth or flavor to a stew. This truly holistic and comprehensive approach to foraging is key to their survival and the richness of the world. Now, the caretaking with the flora really sets the stage for how the series treats its more animated inhabitants. Because if the plants are this detailed, you can only imagine the depth we're about to uncover with the dungeon's fauna. Now we arrive at the heart of Dungeon Meshi's unique appeal, its fauna. These aren't just adversaries. They are complex organisms, meticulously observed by Laios and expertly prepared by Senshi. The series elevates monster design by treating each and every single creature as a potential ingredient, complete with its own anatomy, behaviors, and most importantly, distinct culinary profile. Now let's dive into a few examples and see how this ecological gourmet approach plays out. First example, the basilisk, which is a classic RPG foe, often known for its petrifying gaze, while still dangerous with its potent venom. It's also a subject of intense study. Laios notes its chicken-like movement and anatomy, its diet, which influences its taste and even the function of its gizzard stones. Like, who would think of that unless you are truly passionate about something? This is not just a field block, this is field biology. And when it comes to cooking, the basilisk is treated much like poultry or perhaps even a game bird. Senshi expertly butchers it, identifying prime cuts of meat and noting which parts are best for roasting, stewing, or even incorporating into an omelet. The preparation of its meat, often described as tender and flavorful, directly parallels how one might prepare a high-quality chicken or a pheasant. The venom, of course, needs to be, well, obviously, carefully handled or neutralized, adding another layer of realism, as there are fish out there that chefs prepare that are actually lethal to eat unless it is prepared properly. You see the connection? It's the way they utilize almost every part of it, from the meat to the organs, which echoes true nose-to-tail butchery in our world. And we gotta look at the next one. I've already talked about it, the giant scorpion. Arthropods in general get a lot of culinary attention in Dungeon Meshi. The scorpion, with its tough exoskeleton and venomous tail, presents obvious danger, but once taken out, it presents a unique reward. The comparison here is almost unavoidable. Crustaceans. The way Senshi cracks open the scorpion's shell to get at the succulent meat, like a lobster, the incredible meat inside, you cannot deny the similarities here. They describe the taste as often sweet and delicate, which further reinforces this parallel. The series doesn't shy away from showing the icky bits of preparation, which I do appreciate they keep, but the end result, like a perfectly cooked scorpion leg, is presented as a genuine delicacy. Like, it makes me want to eat it. This transformation of something alien and dangerous into a recognizable and appealing foodstuff is super central to the show's charm. Even smaller insectoid creatures are often treated like crunchy snacks or protein-rich additions, much like edible insects consumed in many parts of our world. But let's move on to something that's a bit less grounded. Something that defies conventional biology, like living armor, for example. You know, animated suits of armor, pieces of metal that move. How can you possibly eat that? Well, Dungeon Meshi tackles this with surprising creativity. The core of the living armor is presented as often like a mollusk-like creature or a magical energy source, which becomes the target. And the way they're handled is fascinating. Sometimes the core is treated like a large clam or an abalone, a tough but flavorful piece of muscle. And other times, the magical properties of the armor itself might be subtly incorporated, like slimes too, great example. These amorphous blob things, often acidic or possessing strange properties, are transformed. A green slime might be clarified and used as a gelatinous base for a dessert, its acidity neutralized or balanced. Or a wine slime might literally become a source of alcohol. That is so cool. This shows an incredible commitment to the premise in the dungeon. Senshi and Laios might find a way to understand it and, if possible, make it edible, often drawing upon principles of molecular gastronomy without even knowing it. That is wild. Now, across all of these examples, a few key principles emerge. Laios' super detailed anatomical sketches and behavioral notes are super important. And then comes Senshi's practical knowledge, how to safely butcher or neutralize toxins, which parts are edible, and how different cooking methods can transform texture and flavor. They consider the monster's diet, what did it eat, its habitat, even its age. An older creature might have tougher meat, younger, more succulent, more tender. All the factors that real-world chefs and hunters consider. This consistent, logical ecological approach to fantastical creatures is what makes their culinary adventures so believable and engaging. So now we've dissected the dungeon's inhabitants as organisms, but the true alchemy of dungeon meshi happens when these creatures meet Senshi's cooking pot. And this is where ecological understanding transforms into culinary art. The series brilliantly bridges the gap between high fantasy and grounded, relatable gastronomy. Senshi is the linchpin here. He doesn't just follow recipes. He's a dwarven culinary savant, applying universal cooking principles to the most unconventional ingredients. His respect for the dungeon's bounty, combined with Laos's often, unnervingly detailed biological insights, leads to a menu that is as inventive as it is surprisingly often delicious. Next, we're going to take a closer look at some of the standout dishes and their clearly real-world culinary ancestors, exploring not just what they look like, but the cooking philosophy behind it, especially when you're dealing with something truly bizarre. Now, one of the earliest and most memorable examples is the mandrake and basilisk meal. Now, this dish is a direct homage to Japanese kakiage. It's a type of tempura where various ingredients, typically vegetables and seafood, are clustered together, lightly battered and deep fried. The Japanese culinary principle here is to highlight the natural flavors of fresh ingredients with a delicate, crispy coating. In dungeon meshi, the vegetable is the carefully shrieked mandrake, and the seafood or meat is the basilisk. Senshi's technique ensuring a light batter and quick fry mirrors the precision of a tempura chef. It's a beautiful fusion of a dangerous fantasy ingredient with a refined, real-world cooking technique, known for its emphasis on texture and freshness. And then there are many hot pot-style meals, whether it's a rich broth made from monster bones, simmered with various cuts of meat, dungeon vegetables, and forged mushrooms. These communal meals are instantly recognizable. Japanese nabe dishes are all about shared dining, slowly cooking ingredients in a simmering pot at the table. Different regions and households have their own variations, obviously, from the soy sauce-based sukiyaki, often featuring thinly sliced beef and vegetables, to miso-based broths or clear dashi. Dungeon Meshi's hot pots captures this perfectly. The warmth, the ingredients, the way the flavors meld together over time. It's a testament to how a simple cooking method can be adapted to almost any set of ingredients, fantastical or otherwise, to create a nourishing and truly comforting meal. And now onto something truly ambitious: hippogriff soup dumplings. Now, this dish is a clear parallel to the beloved Chinese Xiao Long Bao. The magic of real-world soup dumpling lies in a gelatin-rich meat filling, often pork-based, made from pork skin or bones, that melts into a savory broth when steamed inside a delicate wrapper. In Dungeon Meshi, Senshi and Laos meticulously prepare the hippogriff meat, likely utilizing parts that would yield a similar gelatinous quality when cooked, or perhaps even a magically assisted broth solidification. The carefully wrapping and steaming process to ensure the soup stays inside the dumpling until bin is a hallmark of this culinary art form. It shows an incredible level of sophistication, adapting a complex and delicate real-world dish to a majestic mythical creature. And now for a truly dungeon-to-table experience that involves the environment itself, consider the tentacle and kelpie stew, notably prepared with the help of an undine. This dish takes local sourcing to a new level. The tentacles and the aquatic kelpie, which is a dangerous water horse, provide the protein. The undine, a water spirit, isn't an ingredient but an assistant. Now, this complex type of stew, with its many challenging to acquire components and elemental assistance, could be seen as a fantastical analog to something like a French bouillabaisse or an Italian cioppino. These real-world dishes are famous for their rich, deeply flavored broths made from a variety of local seafood, often with specific regional herbs and techniques. The Dungeon Meshi version adds a layer of magical cooperation, yes, but the core of it, the complex stew made with very specific ingredients from very specific regions. The similarities are there. Now, beyond specific dishes, Dungeon Meshi consistently applies core culinary logic. Tougher cuts of meat are slow cooked or minced. Delicate flavors are preserved with quick cooking. Bones are used for stock, which is a fundamental building block of flavor in countless cuisines. Ingredients are balanced for taste and nutrition, with Senshi often explaining the benefits of certain combinations. This culinary realism makes the world incredibly immersive and allows food to be a powerful tool for character expression. Laos's, I guess you could say, analytical gluttony, or Marcial's journey from disgust to appreciation, or Chilchuk's pragmaticism, and Senshi's profound connection to the natural and unnatural world through its flavors. So, from tiny little walking mushrooms to very legit, dangerous, formidable hippogriffs, Dungeon Meshi crafts an astonishingly detailed and functional ecosystem, and it doesn't stop there. It takes that intricate world of bizarre flora and fauna and creatures and monsters and grounds grounds it in the universal language of food, drawing clever and insightful parallels to our own culinary traditions. Now, what makes Dungeon Meshi so special, really, isn't just the monster slang or dungeon crawling, which is great. It's the profound respect it shows for its own world, right down to the tiniest ingredient. It's a series that understands that true immersion comes from understanding how all the pieces fit together, how a creature's biology dictates its flavor, or how even the strangest fantasy can be made relatable through the familiar comfort of a well-cooked meal. But that's just my take on the delicious dungeon. What about you? What monster dish from Dungeon Meshi made your mouth water and you're like, oh, I want to try me some of that? For me, I want to try me some cooked scorpion, man. Are there any creature or culinary creations that you found particularly interesting or fascinating? Share your thoughts and comments down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.